Hello, welcome to Jason Cabinet Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cabinet. I'm also CEO, founder of Cabinets HR. At Cabinets HR, we deliver HR to companies 49 or fewer people with our AI automated platform while combining you with our actual HR business partner. At Cabinets HR, we're also hosting Cabinets HR Seattle's Got Tech for the Seattle Tech event. We're going to have 16 tech startups demoing what they're building. Think of it as like a tech trade startup show and a keynote by Kevin Goldsmith. Our guest today is AJ. AJ, thanks for being here today.
Pleasure.
So AJ, I always try to start with like a softball question. Can you tell us like how you take care of yourself physically, mentally, or what do you do for fun?
Yeah, I think that's a very relevant question, particularly for founders, because we carry a lot of stress. In my particular case, I think my escape is typically writing and reading philosophy. So kind of putting everything on a paper and getting a little bit of mental clarity. Beyond that, exercise, of course, spending quality time with the ones that you love, and also good vitamins and good nutrition and good sleep.
So philosophy, like I'm a big fan of philosophy. Like all the class I took in college, I have a master's. All the class I took in college, the only stuff I kept was I took a freshman philosophy class. That's the only book and stuff I take for all my classes I took. I just love philosophy. That's the mental things you have to do. What if this, what if that? I just love philosophy. Do you have any favorite philosophers?
I do, yeah. So my utmost favorite would be Epictetus, and beyond that, I would say the Stoics.
Yeah, isn't crazy like Stoics? Like, what's the name of the emperor Marcus? I think Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius, yeah.
Of course, I have no idea it's true, but I read on I saw on YouTube like all these journals was not meant for public and Like he just meant for his own personal journals.
Right.
And then after death, like he became like even more famous than he is.
Yeah, the meditations of Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
Those are very good. I strongly recommend everyone to.
And like what 1,000 years later, they're still relevant.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think not only with him, right? Like I think a lot of those philosophers that were very forward thinking for their time, and surprisingly enough, the structure of society as well as the problems that they faced back then are pretty similar to the ones that we have today.
So that's a big point, right? So like we're both kind of tech, right? Obviously, tech has gotten better and better. Like for me, the first tech was like when they started the fire, then the spears, that kind of stuff. So tech, has gotten more and more better. Or that's not the right way to say it. It has gotten better over the years, right? But have we as humans actually got more smarter? Or do you think like the challenges level us today is like the same as back in the Roman Empire days or back like the prehistoric days? I don't think we've really gotten smarter.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Depends on how we measure smarter. If we measure smarter by having more free time as a society to dedicate to the activities that we want, probably not. If we measure it in terms of IQ, I don't think there's any benchmark that we can reference. And then it also depends on what we consider tech, right? Because there's a very plausible argument that the pyramids of Egypt, for example, they were not built with the tech that they claim it was built.
I mean, that's a whole different rabbit hole right there, right? Because like even now, we can't figure out how they did it, right? But obviously they did it right. And the people say it was like the slave labor, hundreds of thousands of like slave labor did it right. But still, those bricks are like, no, I mean, they're pretty big, right? I mean, like, I don't know. Then of course, did some alien technology do it? Like, how did they do this? Or maybe it's like some lost tech, right?
Yeah, and I don't have the answer for that. But one thing that it's a crucial data point is they did interview some of the most advanced construction companies in the world as of today. And some of them, even with their best tech, they probably would not be able to cut and assemble to that level of precision that the pyramids were done back in their day.
And when people think of pyramids, they think just Egypt, right? But there's pyramids like down in South America, Sudan, Ethiopia. There's pyramids all over the world, right? But we just think of Egypt, of course, right? And all of them like this precision level engineering.
Right, and allegedly even in Antarctica.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's some, strange stuff, right? And like, where like, and another thing, like what tech was lost, like, what's that library? I think Alexandria Library, all the information was lost from the library fire, what has been lost in time, right?
Yeah, well, some of it might be lost, some of it might be sitting, some places like the Vatican.
Yeah, you're right, yeah, right. And then like the hieroglyphics on the each of the hieroglyphs, like we think we know what it means, but maybe it doesn't, And just like us, all that stuff is like in the cloud of stuff. Let's suppose like there was a nuclear war, not gonna pass. There's no nuclear war, but like the people, everything's that's lost to time, right? 100 years in the future, we're building stuff. 100 years in the future, if everything's gone, they have no idea how we built it either.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, as far as I know, there are already some services that you can, for the purposes of disaster recovery and similar things, you can send your information out into space.
That's crazy. So here's a question for you. I always ask everyone this question, right? So what you would rather do, right? So you have three options: stay here in the present, or go 500 years in the future, or when you pick, you have to stay there for the rest of your life, right? Stay here in the present, or go have 500 years in the future, or 500 years in the past.
You only get to pick one?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. I would probably stay where I'm at, just following,
Everyone picks that answer, including me, yeah.
Yeah, just following like the sort of Buddhist philosophy of enjoy the present.
Yeah, I'm the same way, like, because some people would say, hey, some people say go in the future, right? But like, you might go 5 years in the future, might be a sign we're all on Mars, so like there might be no Earth, right?
You don't know.
Yeah.
There's no way to know.
And personally, I'm not built to go 5 years in the past, right? All the Black Plague, all the stuff going on, I'm not built for that, right? No electricity, no hot water. Yeah, I wouldn't make it, right?
Right.
Yeah, everyone I know has picked in the present, right? Maybe one or two picked the future, just as adventurous. Yeah, what if all the scientific breakthroughs come through, whatever? But what if it doesn't, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is private equity?
Well, the definitions vary greatly of what private equity means, but at the end of the day, what private equity means is private capital, and it gets deployed, following private rules. So an easy way to think about it, and a simple way to think about it, would be you have a family office with a few millions. You meet a good operator that invests into businesses, and collectively you decide to have a business venture whereby you provide the capital and the operator runs the businesses. That technically classifies as private equity.
Is there like a difference between venture capital and private equity? Like, is private equity like much more money, or what's the difference?
Yeah, there's a huge difference between the two. So typically private equity tends to go into businesses that are somewhat already established, and they have certain degree of traction. They also tend to have much higher equity stakes than venture capital. And venture capital tends to come in very early stages with much higher risk and much lower piece of the equity. They also allegedly, venture capital is more hands-off on the business that they invest, versus private equity is more hands-on.
So as private equity, I know a lot of founders in early stage startups, they go after venture capital. Is private equity, like family offices, a good method for them to try to raise money too, or that's like later down the road?
That's a great question, and I think it depends on what kind of business you want to build, right? So if you want to build a subscription software model type business, perhaps venture capital is the right way to go. If you're trying to build a chain of gyms that is gonna turn into a very good cash flow producing business, but the scalability is limited, and you want to not be constantly be pushed for growth, but as opposed to profitability, private equity might be a better route. So in short, I would say if you want cash flowing businesses, which is the focus of private equity is better. If you just want to grow as fast as you can, as quickly as you can, by any means that you are able to get, then venture capital.
So it's like the last 2 years, the fundraising environment has not been the best, right? Like last 2 years, it's like, wait 6 more months, they're gonna get better, but it's not getting better, right? Like last year, people told me, hey, don't raise funds now. It doesn't matter who wins the presidency. Come January, February, March, the money's gonna start flowing. It sounds like the money's still not flowing, right? So what's your prediction like? Of course, he's here on Pittsburgh, all these Crunchbase, there's all this dry powder out there. The money's there for them to spend, but no one's like investing it, right? So what's your future take on what's going on?
It truly depends on where is it that you're raising, right? So, for example, Silicon Valley is still super active and deploying capital, in very significant amounts. Um, that's more on the venture side, right? There's some very private equity groups that are exceedingly active depending upon which vertical it is. So it varies on a case by case basis. Now, if we take all things equal, sort of speak, right? Money can only sit in the sidelines for so long because whether you're managing a private equity fund or a VC fund, there is a certain number of investments that you do need to make to be able to keep up with the timeline and projections that you have promised to your investors, right? So maybe I can take it slow if there's a lot of uncertainty out there, but eventually the pressure builds up on timing and I need to start writing checks, right?
So basically, like if a VC firm raised $100 to someone, and within 5 years there's still no investment, no money. Whoever they got money from, they don't want the $100 million back. They want the 100 million times like whatever it is, right?
Sure. Can you repeat the example?
So like a VC firm raises $100 million from someone else, right?
Yep.
5 years passes, they have made no investments. There's no money invested, right? Whoever getting the money, they don't want $100 million back. They want $100 million times.
Well, they want the $100 million to be at work.
Yeah.
Not sitting on the side doing
they want
nothing.
more than interest coming back.
Exactly, right? So if someone gives you $100 million to go and invest, they're expecting, one, that you're going to give them a better return than if they put it on treasury bills, right? But two, that you have that money working, right? Like doing something and meeting the projections and the plan that you proposed, right? Not just keeping it there without doing anything. So at one point you need to start investing.
Most VC firms, they invest like 10 years out, right? I already said a VC firm will invest in 10 startups and hopefully one hits a home run, a unicorn, right? And they balance it out past 10 years or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. However, the success rate of VC funds is not amazing. I don't have all of the numbers on top of my head, right? But a lot of VC funds, they tend to return less than the amount that you invested into the VC fund.
Yeah, and can anyone start a VC fund? Is it like getting a law degree to have to go to school and get some kind of certification? Just anyone with money can start one.
That's the key is anyone with money and the right knowledge to manage it and run it and find the right investments, etc. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And you sort of run a VC fund, don't you? The Guardian Capital.
Well, Guardian Capital is a small, tiny private equity firm. We are part of a VC fund in biotech, which is also a very small VC fund. But as an example, talking about the pressure of investing, right? Like we are behind schedule in writing checks, very frankly, right? So right now we need to increase the number of companies that we're looking and the number of companies that we invest in.
And so when you say small fund, it's like 10 million, 20 million?
For the biotech VC funds, I think we have left to invest about 3 point something.
And do you make a certain number of investments per year, or you just play it by ear every year, depending on who comes across your table?
That's a great question. So we do have a plan of how many checks and which sizage each needs to be written every year. But then things change and things happen, and in our case, right now we are behind in where we should be.
And so how does a company get in front of you, right? Is word of mouth referrals, or you have some kind of marketing plan, like some kind of do you have reach out to different biotech companies? How does that work?
That is to find companies and where to invest?
Yeah.
Mostly a good referral network is very important, right? So different types of professionals that are within the industry that you're targeting that can say, hey, Jason, look, this is a very cool project. You probably should look at it for your VC fund, right? So that could be anywhere from experts in biotech to some other people who have also biotech VC funds, right, in our particular case. But people that can introduce you to cool projects, and then you always get the ones that come knocking on your door, right, that you also are supposed to look at.
So when a founder team reach out to you, what sort of things like make you say yes or make you say no? Of course, I know it's more detailed than this, but
yeah, I mean, there's a great deal of things that you should be looking at. In our particular case, for the biotech VC fund, what we care is about companies that are scalable, companies that are mostly software based within that particular industry, that they have a big enough addressable market, that they have, or perhaps the most important is that they have a rockstar team, right? And that they have some sort of track record of being successful at doing what they do.
so biotech's kind of vague. Like, is it like genetic splicing that you're looking at, or like just like how far advanced are you looking for these companies to be?
It literally could be anything as long as those criteria that we have mentioned before, is there, right? But just to give you an example, it could be as simple as a company that provides software to hospitals for a particular procedure, and that they have some significant hospitals already using their software, a great team in place, they're constantly innovating and driving the product forward. That would be an example that would qualify for something that we would look at.
So why biotech? Is that something like you just have expertise in, or like I'm sure you didn't just randomly pick biotech, but why biotech versus all the other things you could invest in?
Well, we sort of got involved into that one, and it's a very nice and interesting industry. My expertise is not necessarily biotech as such. My expertise in this particular endeavor relies on being a part of the investment committee, asking tough questions, making sure that the due diligence has been done, properly, try to poke holes, and also, try to see what are good opportunities that we should be looking at.
So let's say, suppose someone that's like really known to you, like when you're like someone you've gone to before for like referrals, recommends some company to you, right? And they're like a very good referral, right? This guy's referred people to you before; they've always worked out. From the time of the introduction, how long does the process take for you to say like for them to get funded? Is it a pretty quick process? Is it drawn out?
Ideally, for a very well working fund, it should be a month or less for early stages. So either seed or pre-seed, that ideally would be the timeline. In our particular case, because we have in the mandate a lot of fiduciary duties, our process is much slower. So assuming that we do everything properly, currently we see it at about 2 months.
So let's suppose a company or startups out there, they have to decide between getting funded by you or another fund, right? Why should they pick you? What else besides money do you provide to your founders?
That's an excellent question. So we try to provide as much value as we can, whether it's beyond advising, which hopefully we do a good job at that, but also help them expand market share and help them open doors. I think that's important.
And of course, don't tell the details, but any like companies right now you're looking at, like either to invest in, like any like companies on your table right now that you're like looking at right now.
Yeah, I mean the due diligence team is currently looking at a few. They only one out of the current ones that is being looked has made it to investment committee, so that's the only one that I know of as of now.
And y'all invested a pre-seed, seed, like what round do y'all invest in?
Mostly pre-seed and seed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's so risky, right? The pre-seed, because especially biotech, like they'll probably have someone probably this grand plan, but like, can they really prove it? Like, probably not, right? So I think like really have to like the founder has to really be, like you said, a rock star, right?
Yes. Biotech in particular is very, very risky.
So again, don't tell the details if you can, but is there any like startups you invest in already? Like man, this is the future of biotech. Like this is one is gonna make it. I really feel good about this one.
Ideally, I would say I feel good about all of the ones that we have invested into.
I mean, obviously, yeah.
But the reality of it is, there's always one or two that they don't go that well, right? And if we go by the average of numbers,
Yeah.
what you would expect is that 5 at the very least, out of 10 investments that you make, at least 5 will completely disappear. A couple maybe would break even. A couple maybe would do good. And like you said before, 1 out of the 10 would make it so great that you will forget about the other 9.
Yeah, I've seen startups like this have the perfect the perfect team, perfect everything, raise money, and they still fail, right? Everything like line up perfectly, and they still fail, right? So there's really no rhyme or reason, right?
Well, like everything in life, you also need a little bit of luck.
Yeah, luck plays a big part. Luck, timing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So next, let's switch up real fast. So your career began in banking in London, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So my first job was corporate banking in London. Also a little bit of commercial banking. Then I did graduate school here at the University of Washington. After that, I worked in private equity. After private equity, I moved to Microsoft as a finance manager for U.S. Enterprise Services. After that, I moved into venture capital in the realm of blockchain. And after that, I was foolish enough to start my own firm.
So how did you, because you got a scholarship, full ride scholarship at University of Washington, like did they recruit you from London? Like how did that work? Like, I mean, that's kind of random coming from London all the way to Seattle.
Yeah. So my story, really what happened is I finished my undergrad at UCLA with a scholarship too. So my last year was done at UCLA, even though most of my undergrad was done in Barcelona. And then I really, really enjoyed being in the US, but my first job was in London. London was a great experience from a professional standpoint, a culture standpoint, and many other things, but I really didn't want to keep doing that job. And I, quite frankly, wanted to come back to the US. So I thought if I got a scholarship once, maybe I can get it twice. And I applied to a bunch of scholarships, and I got one that was a full scholarship that would cover my studies anywhere in the world. With a full scholarship and a tiny, tiny little stipend to be able to survive every month. And I chose the University of Washington because of the program, really.
So how long did you live in London?
1 year. And quite frankly, I don't think I could have made it more and keep my mental health.
No.
It's a city built for the 1%.
Okay, all right. What are some things you liked about living there and didn't like?
The culture, the architecture, the sophistication, the lifestyle is pretty good. But then again, it's a city that, in my opinion, it's built for the 1%. So if you're familiar with London, it's subdivided into 6 different areas. So think about it like an onion. The area 1 is the core of downtown London. And then as you expand, is area 2, area 3, area 4. So back then, and we're talking 2008, right? 2010. So back in 2010, just to be able to have basic transportation tickets, it would cost me about £100 per month. Just to be able to use transportation, right? So it was very hard to afford. Also, I lived in a shoebox, like complete shoebox while I was there. And the rent was completely astronomical. Like my rent for a shoebox back in 2010 was probably double or close to double my rent for a 1-bedroom in Seattle when I came here.
And that's a good point. Like a lot of people in Seattle complain how high it is here everywhere, but it's all like perspective, right? Like I know people, if you come here from like, we'll say Mississippi, rent's high, but if you come from like, from Tokyo or like Hong Kong or London, rent's here or California, rent's here like cheap, So it's always perspective, I think.
Yeah, for sure. However, the rents in Seattle have been increasing a ton.
Yeah.
So whereas maybe 10 years ago we used to be much cheaper than some of the cities that you have mentioned, like Tokyo, London, etc. Nowadays, we're not much cheaper if we are still cheaper, right? Because I would argue that certainly certain places in Seattle the rent is much higher than most places in Tokyo.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And so, are you originally from Spain?
Yes, from Barcelona.
So, tell me something about Barcelona, Spain that you wish more Americans knew about.
Um, it's like they designed that part of the world with only one goal in mind, which was quality of life, and they disregarded everything else. So I would not recommend it as a place for business or professional career growth. But if you want to have quality of lifestyle and an amazing vacation, it's just great. The architecture is great. The things to do are great. Food is amazing.
And do they still do bullfighting there? Oh,
Bullfighting
yeah.
got banned in Barcelona.
Oh, did it? Okay.
It got banned. An easy way to do it is like you take the half of the country, you draw a line, and everyone north of the line is banned bullfighting. But everything below the line, so center and south, it's still allowed.
Okay. And how often do you go back to visit?
I try to go at least once a year, and if I can, twice a year.
Okay. Nice. So, how long have you been in Seattle?
14 years.
And this is like your home now, pretty much?
I love it.
Okay. Yeah, when it's nice here, it's nice. So, next question. What in the world is a Master of Science in Real Estate Investments and Development? It's like, is that like basket weaving or something? Like, what is that, right?
Yeah, so it's basically, to put it simple, buying big buildings and managing portfolios. So you're looking at, big buildings such as office buildings, huge residential, like huge apartment complexes, and then the aggregation of those, which is what constitutes the portfolios.
Okay. And the next, explain the concept of money, right? Because I don't think people realize the concept of money, right? Like some people would think, I get paid $200,000 a year, that's a lot of money, right? But in reality, it's not right. Like on your bio said that following your graduate studies, you oversaw $425 million of a $200 billion private equity fund. I mean, a lot of people think $2 billion is a lot of money, but in reality, it's not really that much money, is it?
Well, it's all proportional,
Yeah.
right? If you, $2 billion for an individual is a ton. $2 billion for a real estate fund, it's probably not that much, right? Because then you divide that times the number of properties that you can invest in at a certain size, and if your mandate is to buy properties that are 100 million or above, then maximum you can only afford 10 properties with $1 billion fund, right?
And do you still do anything with real estate, or that's like your past life?
I a couple of things on the personal side. On the business side, mostly is through our telecom company, SELLNET, and that is helping big real estate portfolios with their utilities, in particularly electricity, so how to optimize their electricity bills, their water bills, and most importantly, get additional NOI via things like bulk internet.
So next, you spent some time at a blockchain VC firm.
Yes.
So first, I didn't know there was any VC firms. It only invests in blockchain. So how did that come about?
That was during the market hype of 2018. So the market was very much in the favor of all of the things blockchain. Blockchain was starting to get into mainstream. I think it's a fascinating technology, and a technology that together with artificial intelligence, quantum, and some IoT and some other ones has incredible synergies to be the backbone of that infrastructure of the future. And so I was one of the first people to gain exposure into some things that Microsoft was trying to do in blockchain back then. and I started learning more about blockchain, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, etc. It became my passion at the time, and I really, really wanted full exposure to that.
So you always hear like the blockchain is not hackable, right? Is that really true? Because it's not like everything's hackable, right? So how is blockchain not hackable?
Well, one thing is the technology itself, and the other one is the application, right? So, I mean, Cody, who also attended your podcast, is probably orders of magnitude better to talk about that than me. But blockchain, the degree of encryption that it typically has is military grade. So it would require military grade capabilities or beyond to be able to, attack that level of cryptography, right?
Do you think we'll ever switch from like the U.S. dollar as a monetary across the world to Bitcoin or blockchain? Because one thing I like about the Bitcoin or blockchain is like it's the set number, right? There's increase to decrease it where like the U.S. dollar you can just print more money if you want to and cause like inflation, right?
Yeah.
Think that ever happen?
So in 2025 alone, year to date, I think the US dollar has lost somewhere around 10% of its purchasing power. So, I think that's a good data point on why we need alternative forms of money where you cannot constantly inflate the supply. And Bitcoin, for example, the supply is limited. There will be 21 million Bitcoins in existence, and that's it. Also, if you think about it with Bitcoin, which is interesting, the degree of adoption as of today is close to a 4%, which is where the internet was in 1996.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that on your LinkedIn or somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're still early.
Yeah.
We are very early. And now we're at the phase where companies are starting to adopt it, including a ton of publicly traded companies. They're putting part of their treasuries in Bitcoin. Part of it is for the reason that we just have discussed, right? Like the value of the US dollar went 10% down in year to date alone. And that's the US dollar. I mean, there's some other currencies that are losing far more than that, right? So you sort of need to find some sort of store of value. Traditionally, those used to be gold and silver, right? But in the digital age, I would argue is things like Bitcoin.
So like back in the day, the U.S. dollar was backed by gold. It's not backed by gold anymore. I guess it's just backed by the U.S. government, I guess. So what is Bitcoin backed by? Like there's 21 million Bitcoin. What's backed this up?
It's backed by the code, which basically nobody can change the fact that there's, nobody can change the issuance schedule, nobody can change the supply. It cannot be altered, but it's also backed by a huge mining infrastructure that is behind it, which translates into a ton of electricity that is backing the entire network. Also, all of the network that has being built around Bitcoin, and that can go anywhere from the miners that we have discussed to the layers 2 that have been put on top, such as the Lightning Network, Bitcoin ATMs, exchanges, you name it. But now that infrastructure is expanding, and banks are applying for their licenses to be able to hold and offer not only Bitcoin but also other cryptocurrencies, right? So it's backed by all of that.
Now, can people actually make a good career or good living just doing Bitcoin mining?
Bitcoin mining, probably not.
Okay.
So Bitcoin mining requires a very significant investment in infrastructure as of today, and perhaps the key factor is exceedingly cheap cost of electricity. So unless you have abundance of capital for the initial deployment of infrastructure, because you're going to need a substantial amount of equipment and miners and everything else, and you have very, very cheap cost of electricity, it is very hard to be like an individual miner,
Okay.
right? There's many reasons for that, right? Which can take us a lot of time to discuss. But basically, because the network is so big right now, the cost of entry to become a miner is much higher.
Okay. And I know there's like a thing called wallets, right? Where you like store your crypto or Bitcoin in different wallets. There's a lot of wallets out there. Are all wallets like pretty much the same, or is like one that's like more higher quality than others? Or does a wallet even matter?
Yeah, it matters a lot. So the key about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is that if you don't control the wallet, it's not your money. It can be seized just as if it was in a bank. But if you control the keys, right, which is typically like the 12 words or 24 words that are your private keys, then you are the owner of that money and nobody can take it away from you. And to give you an example, you could take those 12 or 24 words, or nowadays even passphrases, put them on a piece of paper, right? And then have access to that money as long as you have that piece of paper or remember the words anywhere in the world, right? Now that's the beauty of it, is that it's a very free form of money that cannot be seized by any other entity, right?
So a Bitcoin, it pretty much takes government agency or government organization out the money flow, right? Sort of, kind of.
Yes and no, because for example, right now, as we have discussed, banks are applying for licenses to start dealing with it. Publicly traded companies are dealing with it. The U.S. government has a national reserve of Bitcoin, right? So I think even nations are starting to think, how do I plug into this, right?
Because like I think isn't El Salvador like strictly Bitcoin now?
El Salvador, as far as I understand, El Salvador still has their own currency, but Bitcoin is legal tender.
Okay.
So you can pretty much use it in any situation that you want.
And this is like the country collapse or anything, economic collapse. So it's obviously Bitcoin can work. Of course, El Salvador is so small compared to the United States.
Yeah, I mean, if the country collapses, it collapses regardless of what it's using, right? But the value of the currency, which traditionally in countries that have problems, sometimes you can see the value of the currency being depreciated even 90% overnight, right, or more. The moment that you have an alternative such as Bitcoin, that is no longer a worry, because Bitcoin cannot inflate their supply.
Yeah. I wonder why they picked 21 million. I'm sure there's a rhyme or reason to it. I'm sure this pick out of thin air, but I don't know, like 20 million. And did they ever like figure out? I can't remember the name of the guy who like invented Bitcoin, but isn't it true like they don't really know who he was?
The guy or group of guys or girls or group of people or entities, right?
I know they have like a I won't say a fake name, but a fake name for this person, right?
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah.
But that could be a group of people.
I never thought about that. Yeah, you're right. It could be.
It could be. I guess we'll never know.
No, we never know, right? And that's probably a good thing, though, right? For the long-term health of Bitcoin, I guess.
I don't think it matters that much because as of now, the original wallet of Satoshi Nakamoto holds 5% of the supply. So 5% is, it's a lot of money, right? But in relative terms, it's just 5%.
Yeah.
And that money, by the way, has never been touched or moved.
Oh, wow.
So we don't even know if they still have access to it or...
I wonder if anybody's trying to like, go to the blockchain itself, like try to figure out, like go way back in the past, like try to like do like, I don't know, IP tracking or VPN, or whatever the case may be, like try to track like the original thing came from,
I think they've tried.
Yeah.
They've tried everything they could, and they've even tried when originally Satoshi Nakamoto used to post on the forums, but nobody, as far as I know, nobody has been able to trace it back, or at least it has been completely undisclosed.
Yeah. I'm sure he has good reason to not want to be like a public figure too, you know.
Sure, and it's probably better if it stays that way.
Yeah, definitely. So next, you do a lot of mentoring at the Comos and the University of Washington. Can you talk about what you do there?
Um, yeah, so there's commotion at the University of Washington, which is a great incubator um, with great people involved, both senior professionals as well as students, entrepreneurs, teachers, etc. So, I mean, the short answer is anything that I can do for the University of Washington to help, I will. And anytime that Commotion or any other entity at the University of Washington want me to go and, um, provide my opinion or advice to anyone that it can help, I'll probably do it.
So how did this relationship start, right? Did they reach out to you or you reach out to them? How did this whole relationship start between y'all?
So I got involved with Commotion very back in the day, and quite frankly, I don't even remember how. Um, but they were starting the Commotion Labs, um, at least a cohort of advisors, and I was part of one of the first cohorts of advisors.
Like I know about Commercial Labs. I had no idea that they're number seven as far as startups launched. I had no idea they were like pushing out that many startups.
Yeah, so at least a few years ago, it used to be the seventh biggest entity into the US by number of startups that they would release each year. So it's pretty big, and it makes sense because it's one of the best universities in the country and in the world. And a lot of ventures come through not only the students that are there that have ideas and they want to convert them into startups and ventures, but also through a lot of the researchers and professors that are working on projects there that would like to commercialize.
Yeah, I don't think most people realize how good the University of Washington is. Like, it's basically Ivy League school. It's known for like having one of the best computer science departments, one of the best human-centered design, one of the best business schools. I mean, it's like top notch across the line. And being in Seattle, Microsoft, Amazon, Boeing, all these tech companies, is really like almost like a talent pool for everyone, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it also is one of the top 20 most beautiful campuses
Yeah,
in the
it's
US.
nice. Like, especially when the cherry blossoms come out. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, but yeah, the quality of pretty much all of the faculty, the staff, the students, and the programs is very nice. I only have good things to say.
Yeah, I know they have a very robust like international student program too. I know a lot of international students apply to go there too.
A lot of international students. Yeah, I forgot the numbers, but
It's pretty
I
high.
think it's probably a third.
Yeah. So why do you think like when most people think of like high class or top notch colleges, like they don't think of UW, right? They think of like maybe UCLA, Harvard, University of Texas, but you rarely hear University of Washington, right? Why do you think that is?
I think they're starting to think about
Yeah.
University of Washington.
Yeah, I do
As you
too.
said, for computer science,
Yeah.
for example, it would certainly pop in their radars.
That the business school, like human centered design, there's so many things like
Yeah.
yeah. Another thing about at the University of Washington, is they have like it's almost like the startup hall. There's another one just for hardware startups. So like they have like different. What kind of startup you have, there's almost a hall for you, right?
There's a lot of very good programs for entrepreneurs, also for sales. So I would say they're fostering that entrepreneurship into the students as much as they can, both at the undergraduate level as well as the graduate level. Um, with all of that said, the University of Washington is putting their best foot forward, but in order to have a thriving startup environment, there's more things that you need to it, right? Amongst them, like good VCs and angel investors, and it needs a full ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's one criticism, at least for me. A lot of other founders like is the lack of VC money here, right?
Yes.
Versus, of course, you can never be the Bay Area. You're not gonna catch up with them, right? But like, I don't know. So this one person told me this one time. I was in the Bay Area to visit some friends. I just happened across some VC. I asked him, hey, can you explain why there's so like the environment in the Bay Area is so different from like Seattle? He said like, and his thing was like in the Bay Area, all the VC people were former founders, right? Where here, all the VCs are like Amazon, Microsoft, whatever. And that's the difference. And he said in the Bay Area, like suppose like you saw you come to $100 million, they always reinvest some money in the community. Where here it's like he seems like a startup makes it, they take the money and run, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid assessment, right? Like if you have been a founder in the past and you have put everything on the line and made it, then you have a lot of sympathy for all of the other founders that are going through the same as you went, right? Like all of the ups and downs, breakdowns and breakthroughs, right? As opposed to as if you have lived a corporate life and you made it early into those companies, right?
Doesn't mean you're smart, right? It just means you're there early.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of smart people too, right? But the risk profile is completely different, right? And it's not the same when you put all of your savings in the line to be a founder than when you have a very good and nice steady salary for the last 20 years, right? So the personalities themselves have very different risk profiles.
Do you think Seattle will ever like change this mentality, or think this is the way it's going to be here forever?
Change the what, sorry?
The mentality of the VC investment.
I hope it does. As more founders start to make it, hopefully they replicate the culture that you were saying before, where they reinvest at least part of it into similar founders, right? And I think there's a certain level of awareness and changes that are trying to take place to enhance the ecosystem as much as we can.
Yeah, it's always frustrating, right? Especially like some of these companies here like they zero funding, right? And they get told no here, and they go somewhere else and get funding like kind of fast, right?
Very fast, yeah. That's very frustrating.
Yeah, and I suppose you always hear like investors here all the time say, no, we only invest in companies that deserve funding.
Right.
Well, like I know like 10 companies like went somewhere else like within 6 months got funding, right?
Right, and I think the difference is somewhere else, like in the valley, again the risk profiles, right? They understand what they're getting into, and they don't shy away from writing that first check.
Yeah.
That very first check. Whereas here, a lot of the different parties, they never like to be first.
Yeah. So I said the podcast before, I have a good friend of mine. And so this I have like 6-7 years ago. She was with a startup. It was like a sales platform, right? She's gonna get a meeting here, right? She ran out of money. So she got a job doing sales in New York City, right? 6 months later, she pitched and she got like a $500,000 pre-seed run, right? And she said within 3 days after that was public, all the VCs in Seattle told her no, like, hey, come talk to me, right?
Yeah, well, that's because most of the hard work is already done, right?
Yeah, like no one wants to be the lead, right?
Right.
And that's probably the hardest thing as a founder to find that lead investment, right?
Yes, which is why they tend to say, particularly at the very beginning, people tend to say, oh, I did it with friends and family money.
Yeah.
Which has always been very painful for me to
Yeah.
hear, because, well, what if you don't have?
Yeah, like I am the friends and family.
Yeah, the friends and family, or you don't want to
Yeah.
request something from your friends and your family,
Yeah.
right? There should be an ecosystem there that supports you and gives you the chance.
Yeah, definitely. So the company you're with now, SELLNET, you have a co-founder whose name is Andre Core, right?
Yeah.
Talk about the process of you and him like becoming co-founders, right?
Yeah. So Andre is like the godfather of telecom in my eyes. And one day we were drinking margaritas together. Was pretty stressed because I was part of managing a hedge fund back then. And he was telling me about how telecom deals are typically multi-year contracts. And I guess that planted the seed. So when I was no longer being part of managing the hedge fund, one day we reestablished conversations. And at the time he was having more than he could handle. So I said, well, how would it look like if we put some sort of a structure around it that supports you in what you're currently doing, right? So that was the initial conception of the idea, was to scale something similar to what he was doing in telecom. And then we thought, well, the real way of scaling this would be to infuse AI also in every single aspect of the business that we can. And that's how the business came about, which was taking technology services distribution, or as we like to call it, technology solutions distributions, to on a scalable level.
And how many years have y'all been working together?
About 2 years.
2 years. You know, they say like you get a co-founder, it's like you're gonna spend more time with your co-founder than your significant other, right? So how is it that your, you know, quote unquote marriage has lasted so long? Where all the co-founders, they work 3-4 months, they split up.
Well, I think it's important to work with people that are aligned with you in values, ethics, the way that you see the business, and to a certain extent the way that you also see the world. There's always going to be different points of views, and it's important to try to reconcile them. There's always going to be different ideas, and it's always important to take them all into account, right? And one thing that we said from the very early days, Andre and I, to each other was like, we only like to work with good people, and we're only going to work with good people. So we even had to fire one client or two because they did not align with the values as people that we have. And me personally, and I think you can read that in some of my company's websites, and I think it's still on my LinkedIn profile, I believe that life is all about people. Consequently, business is all about people, and one has to put people first.
So how do you and Andre balance each other out? Like what skills do you have that he doesn't have, and vice versa?
He's way more optimistic than I am. By a long shot.
I could definitely see that with Andre. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah,
He's
without
very
a doubt.
optimistic,
Yes.
and that's a great energy that I truly cherish and value. And I consider him my brother from another mother, right? He's very, very good at sales and all of the sales vision. His knowledge around telecom is orders of magnitude much bigger than mine. And I would like to think that what I bring to the table is hopefully how to build and scale businesses in a way that is aligned with what we want to build, right? For example, SELLNET was not built to be a super fast growth company that takes a bunch of VC money and runs on the negative for a long time, just taking market share. It was built with the purpose in mind of doing what we like to do, being able to be customer obsessed without having to respond to certain type of stakeholders, right? And also eventually reaching a significant level of profitability as opposed to growth.
I don't tell the details, but you kind of talk about the process of you and Andre, like the conversation for like equity square, like was it 50-50, 51-49? Like, can you talk about those conversations?
Yeah, so Andre and I are called partners in the business, and then we have a few initial investors that have made also this possible. But very transparently, the round that we raised was minimal. Very, very minimal, because we didn't want to answer to VCs. We didn't want to be pushed for growth and having to answer to people that perhaps had different vision or interest than we did, right? And so the investors that we had, first of all, they are aligned with us in what we want to build. They are very aligned also from a people perspective. And also, as I said, the amount that we raised was minimal. So pretty much, just to give you an idea, instead of having to have a credit line at a bank, we just raised enough money that could serve as a credit line and not have any interest attached to it.
So you brought up a good point. Like you said, you fired some clients, right? I think a lot of founders, they make the mistake of not firing clients when they need to, right? Can you talk about the process, like deciding when to fire a client and that's how that goes about?
Yeah, so if someone has completely unrealistic expectations, so say for example that you do provide a service that you guarantee, I don't know, that person is gonna get 5 podcasts per month, right? That's your service, for example. And then that person says, well, no, Jason, like, I want 10 podcasts per month. You say, well, we would need some sort of something to change so I can able to provide you with 10 podcasts per month, right? Say, no, I'm not willing to change anything. As a matter of fact, you just should be able to deliver 10 podcasts per month because I say so. That is completely unrealistic and it's out of whack, right? Something needs to change for you to be able to provide double than what you initially agreed, right? So it means that the customer expectations are not in line, and then if they're not nice about it on top of that, it makes it a relationship that is perhaps not worth your time, right? Is not, you're not providing value both ways, right? Another one is when a customer becomes a very heavy weight into you running your business, right? So they start micromanaging you, they start telling you everything that you need to do and how you need to do it, and you pretty much end up working for them the way that they want, dedicating to them 90+% of your time. That's also probably not, a customer that is worth having, right? I think the ideal relationship is where you craft a win-win situation whereby the customer is super excited, is getting all of the value that they want and more than than what they expected, right? But you also, as the company that is providing that value, you enjoy working with that customer, and it's a fun, professional, amicable, and nice relationship, right? It goes back to what we said of working with good people.
So you're a founder and you're an investor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you find these two roles like conflict with each other, or they complement each other?
I think they're very complementary, because once this goes back to your earlier point where if you invest after you have been a founder, you have that level of empathy that you can put yourselves in the shoes of the founder, right? As opposed as if you, for whatever reason, you just have a bunch of money to deploy somewhere and you have never been in the shoes of the person that you're dealing with, you cannot see their perspective as accurately, right?
So what does SELLNET do?
SELLNET is a technology services distributor, or as we like to call it, thanks to our director of sales, technology solutions distributor. So basically, we have contractual relationships with more than 300+ companies, including most of the publicly traded companies that you already know, and we distribute their services, right? So let's say, for example, that you have any sort of IT or telecom need, anything. It can be cloud, it can be expense management, it can be AI, any type of need. You get to use us as a free IT resource. So our architects and analysts would work for you at no cost, right? Gather your requirements and say, okay, Jason, so let's say that you need a new network redesign. We're gonna do your network redesign. We're not gonna charge you. You're gonna say, what? You're not gonna charge me? We're not gonna charge you. But then we're gonna present you with 5 options of who can execute your network redesign. So maybe one option is Lumen, another option is AT&T, another option is AirSpring, another option is Verizon. And we will present you with the pros and cons of each, right? And we have the same contractual relationship with all of them. So we don't care who you choose because we're already taken care of.
So like if they pick one, your commissions or fees higher than other ones, all the pretty much the same fee. And so how did you build so many relationships in such a small amount of time? A 300 relationship over 2 years, that's like that's a lot, right? How did that come about?
Well, so Andre built this throughout the course of 10 years.
Okay, so it's stuff he did previously.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
and he's a godfather of telecom, like you said.
yeah, and really, we don't have 300 plus. We just say 300 plus not to scare people.
Mhm.
I think one of our architects did a rough recent count of the database recently. I think we have surpassed 1,300 already.
And like, how do I ask this next question? Are there any of these firms like that do more business with you based on any criteria, or is like, are you just much like business evenly spread across all these thousands of partners?
Well, yes. So there's some of them that are leading the way in their particular thing, right? So, for example, there are certain firms that they're super strong in implementing AI in the enterprise, and we know that they're 10 times stronger than some others that also try to implement AI in the enterprise. So we have an opportunity to implement AI on an enterprise. We're gonna lead with the ones that we know are having the most success on that particular area, right?
So it's like with all these partners, it would be kind of hard to be like do like a ICP or perfect customer, right? But so do you have like a perfect customer or ICP, or you don't?
No, like our biggest account to date is a publicly traded company in the New York Stock Exchange with $88 billion in revenue. And our smallest account to date is a local restaurant with about 3 restaurants. And then we have anywhere in between. And we take the utmost care of all of them, regardless of size. Because one of our mantras is that there's no deal that is too small, too medium, or too large. And we will treat all of them the same.
Like how did you get all your customers? Right? Just word of mouth? Are you relying on the Godfather Andre to bring in customers? How did that come about?
Well, the way that we really started, it was Andre and I spent probably 4 hours going through our LinkedIn, looking at every single connection that we had, with the mindset of who can we help in their IT or telecom. And then, try to get some time with them and asking them, what are your top 3 pain points in your IT or telecom stack? Or what are your top 3 initiatives for this year? And, if what they replied fell in line with something that we could help, we tried to provide value. That's how we started most of our pipeline. And then obviously, beyond that, for scalability, you need systems that provide pipeline generation. Relationships are great, but they're not infinitely scalable.
So let's suppose a company comes to you for whatever, and you recommend to them to, like, we'll say ABC company, right? And 3 months later, that client comes, hey, ABC company's totally messes us up, right? What happens then? Do you give them a refund? Do you go to the ABC company, hey, ABC company, this client's not happy with you? How's that process work?
So we don't carry the paper. So the customer directly contracts with whatever provider they want. Our job, you can think about it as, when you need insurance, the job of an insurance broker, which is provide you with all of the different options and tell you what are the pros and cons of each, right? But once they have signed with a particular provider, we remain as what is called secondary support. So for example, if you ever have an outage and that provider doesn't pick up the phone for whatever reason, you can call us and we will do our very best to put you in front of that provider right next minute.
And so you have like some kind of customer service call center that handles those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, we have our own company phone numbers, but initially it needs to go to the provider, right? Because they're the ones providing the infrastructure. We are like a fallback option, if you will.
Okay. Is there a plan to do anything besides telecom in the future? Like expand whatever you're doing?
We're doing a lot of things that are beyond telecom. So in the realm of IT, we're distributing cybersecurity, we're distributing IoT, we're distributing AI for the enterprise, digital twins, even if a financial sector company needs to integrate blockchain infrastructure, we can match them or provide them with options on institutional level quality providers for that.
So would you say you're a sales company, a AI company, a tech company? Like what kind of company would you say you are?
I would say think about it as an advisory company, where our role is to become the trusted advisor of anyone who has an IT or telecom need. Then gather their requirements and needs and vision and wants. Based on that, provide them with some options. Tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly of every single option to the best that we can, because our goal is for that person to be satisfied with whatever they choose. And why? Because the next time that they have another need, we also would like for them to come to us. So trust is very important, and us doing good for our accounts and customers is very important, because that's the only way that the business is sustainable.
So you've been in business for 2 years. It's like y'all have like very fast growth, right? But have you grown like as fast as you wanted? It's like not fast enough. Of course, it's always not fast enough, right? But
And it's never as fast as you want.
yeah,
The world moves at a different pace than we would all would like it to be. And sometimes, there's a lot of factors that are external to you, and sometimes life also comes into play, right? But I think what it truly matters is that we're doing the best that we can, and we're doing good work, and we see very satisfied customers that sometimes they said, wow, like that was very, very good. What else do you guys do? What else do you guys, can you help me with? And that's some of the best things that you can hear from an account.
So one time I was surprised that like you mentioned you might recommend Lumen or Verizon or AT&T. I always think like your Lumen, you would say, hey, SELLNET, like only use me, right? Like they wouldn't want any competition, right? Don't why am I being compared with like AT&T, Verizon? How do you get these companies say no? It's actually good for you to do the pros and cons versus your competition.
Well, that's a different business model, right? So there's companies that they distribute only for a particular company, so they distribute only Lumen, or they distribute only AT&T, and they distribute only one thing, right? They might only distribute network, or they might only distribute voice over IP. We are the opposite approach. We distribute a ton of things, like 1,300 companies times the number of products and services that they have, which is a huge number. So the way to stay organized is with a good database, and your architects, solutions architects, always up to date with everything that there's in that portfolio, right? But our business model is to provide people with options, right? As opposed to one single one. That's the business model that we have chosen, and we believe is the right one, and the one that plays out at the end the best for the customer.
And y'all do this, like suppose at the end of the year, right? I'll make this up. Suppose there's in some industry like company 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At the end of the year, you like compare them all, like, okay, customer, like company number 3, they didn't make their scores, like customer service was bad, all this stuff like really bad. We need to like drop them off, or you just keep them as a partner no matter what.
We might give them as a partner just as the courtesy, but they might never win a deal, and they might never even be presented as an option in any deal.
And do you tell them that you're going to drop them off, sort of, kind, or just you just keep it to yourself?
Well, if they ask,
Okay.
we will have a very transparent conversation of things that need to improve for us to bring them into deals.
Okay. So next, we'll go back to sound in a minute, but let's talk about networking, right? So me and you actually met at a SELLNET networking event, right? And we're like, I sent this podcast before, so Jaime invited me to it, right? I know Jaime for a while, he invited me, right? So my calendar, the day I was like, man, I was tired, it's all the way to the world, that I think World Trade Center place up here, whatever it was. Man, Uber's like $10,000, do I really want to walk half a mile and a half, right? I was just, they just like, I don't want to see no people. I said, man, I told you I was going to go, right? So I went there, right? And I met like so many people, right? With no expectations, like me, you, Andre, Michelle, Karen, Cody, right? I think I have like 7, 8 really good connections, right? So talk about the importance of networking and putting yourself out there.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear, first of all. So thank you for that. Yeah, we put a lot of care in the events that we host. All of them have the goal of people having fun at them, right? So even the titles that we put, with most of the credit of all of the titles of the events goes to Andre. Business and Bourbon, Tech and Tequila, all of those. But the goal is for people to have fun. Um, Also, do business, right? Business is important too. But there needs to be some sort of value that is provided, right? It cannot be one-way street of asking, hey, I want your business, that's it, right? Like that's one-way street. We try to provide two-way streets where people have fun, they expand their network, they expand their knowledge, and then hopefully, if they have an IT and telecom need, they come to us because we are a free IT resource and we will present them with options.
So you're gonna laugh at this, right? I'm kind of slow sometimes, but for the whole night, I thought it was Tech Death ILA. I didn't get to tequila connection to like when I was talking, like, oh shit, Jason, you're fucking dumb as fuck, right? What the fuck's wrong with you, right? And like, yeah, I thought it was like I couldn't get it. What's the tech? What's the ILA stand for? I didn't get it right. And that's like, Jason, you big dummy, it's tequila. Oh shit. Yeah, I'm probably the only person in the whole room didn't get that.
Yeah, tequila. Yeah.
Yeah, and y'all do those like once a quarter, I think.
We do them whenever we can, because the rhythm of business sometimes is very hectic and it doesn't allow us to host events. But when we were on a roll, we probably did once a month. Now probably it's looking more like once a quarter at the current stage that we're at.
And do you change locations, or is it always the same location?
We change locations.
Okay.
Yeah, we change locations. We typically go to the ones that we like the most working with, or again, we provide value both ways, right? And hopefully, there's one coming up with a very cool group in town that everyone knows about. That is very, very fun, and we're working on that one.
Nice. When do you think that one will be?
Hopefully September.
Okay, a little ways out. So what are some keys? Like, I have no idea how much you involved you with like the actual like the work putting the event together, but like, what are some keys like of doing a good event?
Doing a good event, I think the atmosphere and the space is very important. Good food and good drinks always help, of course, right? What is the type of people that you put in the room that is the most important, right? Because if you put, very unfriendly people all together in a room, even if it's shared numbers, probably nobody's gonna have fun.
Yeah, we've all been to events, especially like your event, a networking event, like no one talks to you, everyone's a little cliches, right?
Right.
But one thing, like your event, like at least 7 people came to me just talk to me, right? Had no idea the word, like that, like this never happens here in Seattle, right?
We try to bring good people.
Yeah, like everyone just started talking to me, like I started talking to people, just a vibe started flowing, like you know.
Connecting good people.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, connecting good people.
I did a good job of that.
Thank you.
And of course, you do events that give back to the community, but what do y'all get out of the events too? Do you actually ever get any customers out of it, or?
Yeah, so hopefully, when someone has a tech and telecom need, they come to us. They remember us, and they say, "Oh, like these guys said that when I needed cyber, when I needed network, when I needed IoT or expense management or anything else, that I could come to them and it would cost me anything, like nothing." Hopefully they do come to us when they do have a need.
Yeah. So changing subjects, what's a skill you don't have that you wish you had?
A lot. There's so many. I wouldn't know where to get started. But I try to get better at the things that I like to do. But even in writing and reading philosophy, I wish I could get better at that. So it's a constant improvement. So for me, it's more about incremental and constant improvement, as opposed to saying like, I wish I could push a button and have this.
Okay.
But if I could choose, I would say maybe fly.
Okay. All right. And so next, what's something that is like it's not in your resume, no one knows about it, maybe your close friends or family, but something that you're very proud of that you accomplished in the past that pretty much no one knows about?
Hopefully saving someone's life.
Nice. So what do you think you and Andre have learned about from building SELLNET that you didn't know before?
every day we learn something. Uh, every day we learn something. Whether it's the boring stuff of compliance, accounting, and things that you need to do to run a business, or whether it's the fun stuff on how to better provide value to your vendors, suppliers, customers, uh, co-workers, everyone, right? So I would say hopefully every day we learn something.
So what's a quote unquote typical day look like for you?
There's no such thing as a typical day, which I think is part of what makes it fun. But more often than not, we are in a lot of video conference calls. Like any given day, a day that a crazy day could be a packed schedule from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. with calls, no room for lunch or anything, 30-minute calls each and stacked back to back. And some of them might be with potential customers, existing customers, providers, all sorts of things, partners.
So what's your process of like, suppose you have just a hard decision you have to make. How do you go about making this hard decision?
I think it depends on what the hard decision at hand is. I think in life we're constantly faced with hard decisions. Not always do we always make the most optimal decision. I think it's important to look at it from an analytical way, but also listen to your heart. So I don't have a quick template for that.
Okay, no worries. So SELLNET's only 2 years old. That's like a baby company, right? Any things you wish you would have done differently?
That's a great question. No. And the reason is, even in the things that we did that did not work out, even in those we learned. So it is still good to have been through those, because we learned a lot through that experience. And sometimes it's very good to make one of those early mistakes, because it prevents you from making it down the road when it probably would have had a much bigger impact.
What about tech excites you right now?
What's that?
What about tech right now excites you?
Pretty much all of it. I think the current time that we're living, technology is becoming exponential. So take for example, when we all started using AI, in just a matter of months, what those AIs can do today versus what they could do when they were released is worlds apart, right? So we're in a phase that technology is becoming more and more exponential, and also the degrees of adoption and the speed of adoption for some of those technologies is also much faster than it used to be.
So I think you said like SELLNET is for pretty much any industry. But is there any industry that SELLNET cannot help out?
Any industry in the private sector that needs any sort of IT or telecom, such as cybersecurity, network, IoT, digital twins, AI, expense management, UCaaS, CCaaS, any sort of IT or telecom stack we can help with.
So all these industries, all these tech stacks, all the stuff you're doing, all the different companies, all the partners, like how do you keep track of all this stuff, right? Is there some kind of master database y'all go to? Like, 'cause that's a lot.
There is a massive database, and then we have solutions architects that are experts in their respective verticals. So one of them might be super good at cybersecurity and be very familiar with everything cybersecurity. Another one might be an expert in network and be very familiar with everything that we have to offer around network. Another one might be the one for expense management. Another one might be the one for cloud. So we try to have those different experts for each particular vertical.
And so all these partners are like pretty well established companies? Like can a kind of like a random startup reach out to you? Hey, my startup is ABC company. We do we're a brand new robotics IoT company out of wherever. Want to be one of your partners, or that's like too early?
If what they do is very unique and very differentiated, and it provides very good value, we would be happy to work with them. As a matter of fact, we've done it in the past with some relatively small companies or startups, but what they were providing was incredible.
Is there anyone else doing this, like what you're doing?
Yeah. There's many companies that might be doing something similar. A lot of them, what they do is they're called resellers.
Okay.
So they have a very similar model, but they resell. So
more like middlemen or middle salesmen or something like that.
And they put their pricing on top.
Okay.
Right, and they put more often than not, they even put like their label, right?
Like a white label thing,
Yeah,
so to speak.
So they might be selling network or cyber or whatever it is, but they put their name on it and they put their pricing on top of it. We don't like to do that for many reasons.
So we're both located in a neighborhood of Seattle called Pioneer Square. And so you're the expansive building. How long have y'all been in the expansive building?
Since October 2024.
And were you someplace else before, or?
Yeah, we were at the Columbia Tower.
Oh, Columbia Tower. So why Pioneer Square? Where's all the places you could go to for your business?
So we grew, and we needed some sort of more formalized, permanent office space for people to come in and work together. We look at a lot of different options in the area, and we wanted a place that A, would be nice, but B, would also be affordable, and C, also hopefully have a good community on it, right? And so that one met all of the criteria.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Pioneer Square, right? I mean, there's so many restaurants, bars, like my rent's like dirt cheap. Before I moved here, I used another space. It was like $1,000 a month, and they want to raise it to $2,000 a month. It's like half the size of this, so I'm paying like $650, I think, for everything, right? But I do wish there was like less riffraff, for lack of a better term, right?
Yes, and a little bit more safety and a little bit more
I mean, like I've never seen anything happen, but you always said, like, I think a couple of weeks ago, someone got murdered like at 3 a.m, like a couple of blocks away. Of course, I'm not gonna be at 3 a.m, of course. So but yeah.
Well, I don't know about that particular aspect, but there's things that should be fairly easy to do.
Yeah.
Such as keep the streets clean and free of drug use.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been in your office one time, and like the window where your office is, you look down. There's always like people right there sleeping in the streets, doing like whatever they're doing, right? So that can be very conducive to your business, like bringing a particular client over. You look out the window, like there's some illegal activity going on, so that can be the best thing either, but but generally, I like this area a lot, right? I just like the atmosphere, the history,
Exactly, but thinking about the fact that we are one of the richest cities in the world. And thinking about the tremendous budget that is allocated to
all that money and nothing's been solved as far as I can tell.
Right, there might be a very significant gap somewhere.
Yeah, this is my theory. I have nowhere to prove. I just think there's I think a lot of these like organizations who are like made like fail to solve the problem. They're like, they're gonna get paid six-figure salaries, right, and they're not solving anything, right? So like, why solve a problem and you lose your job, right? It's kind of like counterproductive, right?
There might be some very clear conflicts of interest in some places.
I don't know. It's like I always say, like people way smarter than me, way more money than me haven't figured out yet, right? So I have no hope of solving it, right?
We can talk about that more over beer.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So you talk about the sum, but go in more detail, like how SELLNET got started. Well, first of all, let me go backtrack. SELLNET, is that like any significance to that name?
Yeah, so SELLNET is like the Skynet, but for sales.
Okay.
So instead of Skynet, SELLNET.
Okay, nice. And do you, Andre, come with that name together, or?
I'm glad you asked, because that was gonna be my next point. Is even the name was chosen out of AI options.
Mm-hmm.
So we used AI, and mind you, like this is two years ago, right? So it was very early days for AI, but the name was done with AI, the logo was done with AI, the website was done with AI, our first presentations were done with AI. that's why we try to infuse and apply AI to everything that we do and that we can.
That's actually one of my pet peeves right now. Like you go on LinkedIn and someone posts, there's too much AI, there's too much that, they'll be original. Like to me, like if I'm gonna like use a company and they say, like suppose I'm picking a marketing company, one says we use AI, one says they don't. Like I'm going to the ones that use AI, right? Like what are you doing, right? This isn't the 1980s no more, right? Like use the current technology, use the tools you have to make it better, you know?
Yeah, it goes back to, for example, doing finance, right? The very beginning you had to deal with pen and paper. Then, you were lucky if you could use a calculator. Then you had Microsoft Excel, right? Now you can just ask the AI. At the end of the day, what's going to make you more productive so that you can allocate your time in the areas that you can truly provide value, right? Probably I cannot provide a lot of value spending a bunch of my time doing accounting.
Yeah.
Even though, I might be okay at it, maybe not. But my time is better spent somewhere else. So it does make sense for me to try to put as much automation as I can into the areas where I, within my person, cannot provide too much value. And even in the areas where I can provide a lot of value with my current knowledge and skills, those can be enhanced by having the right tools, or in this particular case, the help and support of AI.
Yeah, I kind of compare AI now to like back in the day when like calculators first came out. I'm aging myself. Calculators first came out. All the teachers like you're not gonna have a calculator in your pocket all the time. You'll do it manually, right? But now like everyone has like a phone, like just typing the numbers, right? I think AI is kind of the same way, I know someone put a post on LinkedIn where they did a study, right? And the study supposedly said people that use ChatGPT, their brain level it was proving they're getting dumber and dumber because they use a brain like. I want to see the peer review, right? Because like I use it all the time. I know people use AI all the time, and it's like they're getting smarter, right? That they're not asking better questions, better like details, right? So I said I don't know if I believe the study here, right?
I guess it depends on how you use it, right? There might be people that are just delegating pretty much every decision to AI, right? And there might be people that they're very thorough about
definitely
their situation. They want to have additional analysis and additional points of consideration, and probably cover some blind spots that they might have in their assumptions.
Yeah.
And then their thinking actually gets enhanced.
I know that's I think too. Yeah. And plus, like for me when I use it, I always go through like 3 times, like reanalyze it, redo this again. Sometimes I'll take on some of ChatGPT and cross over to Claude, like get both both perspectives,
Exactly, and there's also not everyone uses AI the same way, right? As the examples that we have discussed, but also there's people who say, AI, tell me about this.
Yeah.
3, 5, 10 words max, right? And there's people who have a prompt.
Yeah.
That is 10
prompt
lines.
engineering is a thing.
Yeah, exactly. With consider all of these things and think about this way, etc. Right? And so there's a lot of thought that has been put into that prompt and that request.
I mean, there's a bit of difference between saying do a plan for open a restaurant versus create a detailed plan where I serve X, Y, B, open this, and this.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the use.
Yeah. So we all talk about SELLNET some, but go in more detail like how SELLNET got started, what the focus is now, what the big dream vision is for SELLNET into the future.
So there's the vision is to try to help as many businesses as we can in their IT and telecom needs. That's the vision. But we don't want to sacrifice on the quality of that level of attention and advisory that we provide at no cost. So it will scale until we reach the limit in those certain metrics, right? And ideally, we do very well, and a good exit would also be welcomed. But if that exit doesn't come, at least hopefully we will have fun with it, help people, provide value, and do good things in the journey. So
telecom, are the laws for telecom pretty much the same across the United States, or like each city have different laws regarding telecom and like regulations, that kind of stuff?
It depends for which things. So, for example, for network competition, different states have different rules. When it comes to regulating utilities, also different states have different rules. So yeah, I would say each state is somewhat different.
So how does this work? I always want to know this, right? Like, suppose like here in Seattle, there's like those Comcast or Lumen. Like I use Atlas Networks for my internet. Do they all use like the same bandwidth, same cables? How does that work?
Well, that's probably a better question for Andre.
Okay.
But as far as I understand, there's what you would consider the main pipelines, right? And then there's the sub pipelines.
Okay.
And then there's companies that rent both the main pipelines as well as the small pipelines.
Okay.
And the same with cell towers and everything else, right? So there's the ones that build it, the ones that operate them, the ones that are the carriers, and then the ones that lease it or rent it or whatever it is. So there might be many different players in many different shapes.
Okay. And then changing the subject again, you actually speak 4 languages, correct?
Yes.
What 4 you speak? Spanish, English?
Spanish, English, Catalan, and a little bit of French.
Okay. And the third one, that's a Spanish language?
So Catalan is spoken in the Catalonia region, which it would basically be the equivalent of a state here in the U.S., right? It's currently spoken by about 9 to 13 million people.
So very, very, very small percentage of the world.
Very small percentage, yeah.
So I'm guessing you don't use that language every day. Like, how do you stay fluent in it?
Well, we grew up speaking half Spanish and half Catalan on every single context that we developed with. So, was it a very good use of the time? Depends on who you ask, right? Personally, I think it would have been much better off spending that time learning Chinese, because now I would be fluent in English, Spanish, and Chinese.
Yeah, I remember when I was growing up in school, everyone like you have to learn French or Russian, right? Because that's the language you got to learn, and then Russian because that's like they're our enemies, so to speak, right? But now it's like, man, I prefer to learn Chinese. Yeah,
because those are the 3 predominant languages by number of people that speak it, right?
Yeah, definitely. So do you see yourself like speaking all those languages all the time? Just speak English?
I would say the 3 of them I speak on a regular basis, but the English is my main one. Even my dreams are in English right now. Yeah.
I always want to know that too. Like like people speak 2 languages, right? Like, do they dream in the other language, or it's like I always wonder about that. Yeah.
At one point, I think your brain switches.
Yeah.
So my dreams are now 100% in English.
Yeah. They used to be in Spanish though.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, when I speak Spanish with my parents and family, sometimes it's a little bit rusty.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
I don't remember certain words, or I have the word in English but not the word in Spanish. Right. So it's interesting how it plays out.
Yeah, the brain's just a fascinating organ, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much we don't know about the brain yet.
Yeah, they say that we use roughly less than a 10% capacity.
Yeah.
That's not my area of expertise, so I don't
know,
but it seems to me that, based on how humanity is going, we might not be using the full capacity.
Yeah. Is there anything about AI that scares you? Those are like the Skynet stuff. AI is gonna be more smarter than us. It's gonna take over the world. Or are you more optimistic?
I think it's the same with anything in the world, right? You can use a fork to eat.
Or stab someone in the neck and kill them.
Exactly. So it depends on how it's used. And the only thing that I can control is how am I going to use AI. Yeah. I cannot control how the rest of the people or corporations or governments are going to use AI, so I wouldn't know.
So on my podcast, I basically copied Joe Rogan, right? So I listened to that Joe Rogan podcast. His last 2 guests, the one guest, he's some kind of professor out of the University of Louisville, and his prediction is like AI is going to kill humanity within 50 years, right?
Yeah.
And the next step was like another guy, direct opposite, right? Another professor, another college doing the same thing. His prediction within 50 years, we're going to be living the best world ever because AI is going to make everything so good, right? So these 2 very smart individuals have these 2 direct opposite predictions, right?
Yeah. I personally don't think we're going to live in the best world ever because as of today, we already have the technology to be able to live in the best world ever.
Yeah, we do.
And we're not.
Yeah.
We could have infinite energy, and we could have no scarcity of a lot of things that we have scarcity, but that's just an artificially created scarcity.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I don't think that we're gonna reach that unless something fundamental.
Unless humanity changes the way we do things, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, because I think I read somewhere like there's no reason for anyone to have no clothes. Like there's enough clothes in the world right now. If everyone have like 1,000 outfits,
Yeah. And
there's enough food. Like no one should be hungry,
And the whole page of scarcity around energy and other things is
there's so much energy out there.
It's completely made up. Yeah.
Like so, I grew up in a town called Odessa, Texas. Like West Texas. It's like part of the Permian Basin, and there's enough oil just in the Permian Basin for the next 150 years, only from the Permian Basin, right? And there's Saudi Arabia, there's all this energy, there's nuclear, like there's so much energy out there. Just like you said, the scarcity is like put on by different organizations,
And renewables, right?
Yeah.
So we have the technology to put solar, wind.
Yeah. If we ever figure out what's called fusion energy, the nuclear fusion, if you ever figure that out, then definitely.
Yeah, and the ones that are under development, and the ones that patents already exist, but they're never going to allow them to be commercialized. Right?
No, that's unfortunate too, right? It's until the humanity can change their mindset, that's I don't know. Yeah. So what's
just on that topic, just if anyone is interested, there's a website called the Venus Project, and basically visualizes very nicely this that we're talking about on how humanity as of today could get rid of all of the scarcity in the different areas where there's an artificial scarcity created.
Yeah. So here's one for you. What's your prediction as far as the future of tech, right? And I'll give you my prediction first, right? So like way back in the day, it would take like 6 months to go from England to the United States, and now it takes 6 hours. I think in the future, it's going to be like how it takes it takes like 6 years to go from here to Mars. I think we're going to figure something out with physics or engineering. Like instead of 6 years or 6 months to go from Mars, it's going to take like 6 hours. We're going to figure something out.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I have no expectations. I hope to be gladly surprised by good developments. Unfortunately, when you see those movies that are of genre cyberpunk and dystopian futures, I think that's more where we're headed, where it's high tech, low life.
Mm-hmm.
So we have better and better tech every single time, but not necessarily our quality of life is getting better proportionally.
Yeah, and you would think it would be like both of them, right? But like you said, sometimes it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah, one would hope, but there's many conflicts of interests at play from many different parties.
Now, how do you prevent this, right? So, I think like we're in Seattle, like the big cities, right, have a tech advantage, right? How do we make sure like the rural areas, like small town Arkansas, small town Colorado, have the same access to all the tech like the big cities do?
But don't you sometimes might look at them thinking that they actually have a much higher quality of life?
That's true.
So if we homogenize everything, then there's no choice, right?
Yeah, that's true. So when's the next time you're going back to Spain, you think?
It depends. Maybe I get to go towards the end of the summer. If not, hopefully for Christmas.
So is there anything like in Spain that like you can't get here? Like I can only get this thing in Spain. Like there's a certain dish, a certain drink that you really miss.
Yeah. So I think the quality of the food in general.
Yeah.
And the quality of the sand in the beaches.
Yeah, Washington doesn't have a beach. Washington has a coast. Yeah, there's no beach here in Washington. It's coast. There's a big difference.
Yes.
And Spain has a very, very good wine too. Also, don't they?
Very good wine, and it's super cheap.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's cheaper than water.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a picture in December of 2024 of very good bottles of wine, like we're talking like a reserve.
Mm-hmm.
For take a guess.
say like $10, $2. Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah.
It was good wine, and probably the same bottle would sell here for like 20 plus.
Easily, yeah. Are there any really good Spanish restaurants in here in the area that you can recommend?
In terms of authenticity, probably not.
Okay.
In terms of a good experience and getting a feel for it, I think the Harvest Vine
Okay.
in Madison is pretty good, and then there's one in Bellevue in the main street that is also fairly good for certain dishes. But I personally wouldn't rank any of them
Okay.
close to Mama's Food or Grandma's
Yeah,
Food.
yeah, definitely. So for yourself, what do you see yourself like? What are your personal goals for yourself?
To go as far as I can with everything I have, and hopefully reach a little bit of enlightenment. That's it.
Are there any philosophers that you'd like to have dinner with, besides the one you mentioned? Like
Well, Epictetus for sure.
for sure, okay.
Seneca would be fun, although it seems like he talked a lot.
Yeah,
Because when you read something, it's very verbose. Marcus Aurelius.
yeah, definitely him.
I guess that would be great.
I've always been a big fan of Voltaire. I always like Voltaire.
Yeah, and then
Any current philosophers?
any current philosophers.
It's I can't think of any current philosopher off the top of my head, unfortunately.
There was one that now his name is slipping my mind. He was British.
I think I know who you're talking about because I follow. There's a YouTube channel I follow.
Yes.
That I think it's the same guy. I think of his name. Yeah, has to be the same person. Yeah.
Yes, I mean like literally have it at the tip of my
Yeah,
tongue.
I see YouTube channel in my head right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So is there anything I should ask you? I haven't asked you yet. Or anything else you want to talk about?
Up to you. I'm very much enjoying the conversation. At one point, probably I should get back to work too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So how can people reach out to you?
They can send me a message on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I think that'd be great.
Okay. Cool.
You're gonna post it on
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
there we
Yeah.
go.
Post everywhere. Yeah.
That would be a good way.
Cool. So Andre, before we get out here, can you give us a lot of value, give us a lot of advice and stuff, but can you give us any last minute advice and wisdom on anything you want to talk about?
Which type of advice would you?
Anything that you feel you want to talk about?
I mean, my only advice that I have for myself is to try to become better and provide value and live in a way that you think is meaningful. So if at one point something happens or it ends for whatever reason, that at least you go with a smile and without regrets.
AJ, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, Jason, thank you so much.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. And remember to be great every day.